We look to a day in the early summer of 1915, a peaceful, warm day in Courtmacsherry harbour, down there off the Old Head of Kinsale, when people looked out at the peace. And indeed, that same day, the liner Lusitania was steaming in from New York on her way to Liverpool. She sank, some might say, into history with almost all hands and almost all passengers. Miss Mary Crowley, who lives in Coolbawn, remembers that day well.
Oh, yes, I do remember. It was a beautiful day, beautiful. There wasn't a ripple in the water, and there wasn't a breath in the air. When the alarm came on that the Lusitania, there was a call for the lifeboat that the Lusitania was going down. And all I remember to see, as I told you, the father and all them, they had to chase across the Strand there to get to the lifeboat. I saw them running over, and we watched them with the colours, that's what ours, you know. And the red flag was put up over from the lifeboat, or raised the red flag, when the lifeboat was going out. And we watched to the crew, we must be watching with the colours. We loved the colours. But there was always a warning when the lifeboat was going out. She used to go twice a year. There was 2 lunches a year, and they were the crew. There was a winter lunch and a summer lunch. And we'd always be sure we wouldn't be in bed that morning to see the lads going off with their colours. But the alarm came that the Lusitania went down, and that was a beautiful day. And we always heard it was just 7 miles off of the Old Head of Kinsale. But it's off of Seven Heads it went out straight from Seven Heads.
And your father and the uncles headed across the Strand?
Oh, and several more from here. The crew were mostly from here, with the crew over there. There was how many that was in the crew? Was it 10? 10, I think it'd be the crew.
And then she splashed down into the water?
Splashed down as soon as the shot went off, the rocket as I call it. We saw her sliding down the slip and away with their oars, pulled away out, and they came back late at night. But they picked up bodies. I don't know, I can't be sure that they had any live, but they had bodies, and they put them aboard a naval boat, you know, from Queenstown. The tug was there.
Was there big activity here that day?
There was a lot of it. Well, they mostly chased out to Seven Heads, you know, to see it out there, but you could see nothing but the boats. But bodies, if you talk to Jerry Murphy, he was in the bodies, they never forgot it. The men, women and children and babies, mothers and babies, their arms and they're drowning. They couldn't save any more. There was a lot of boats.
Your father was upset by it, was he?
He was, no. Well, he was in several wrecks before that. And the only time that failed him was the remembrance, you know, of the Cardiff Hall. That was a bad night. They couldn't go that night. But every other wreck before that in Dunworley. Dunworley was an awful place for him. Don't ever live out there.
Where did the Cardiff go down?
She went down in Travara, Strand.
A bad night, was it?
That was a terrible bad night. Terrible bad night.
What's it like here in the winter? Is it very wild?
Oh, when the wind is south-east, we get a lot of it. Storm when it's south-east. But otherwise, you know, it passes away pretty quick, like the summer on us. When the winter is over, we look forward for the summer.
Do you like living in Coolbawn?
I walked out to Coolbawn, you know. I went out to Coolbawn when I was young. I lived in Butlerstown. I worked in Butlerstown. But still, I was born and reared here, and I suppose I'll finish up here.
And so we headed across that same strand, across to Lislee, the home of Jerry Murphy, a fresh-faced man, full of years. Jerry remembers well the morning of the Lusitania. He was walking, as he says, in the fields with the horse and pots, and he tells the story himself.
Working there when the coxswain came along, he was doing coast watch out. He was employed doing coast watch by the English government, and he was out along the coast. And he saw the Lusitania being torpedoed out here in the bay. And he ran from there to the secretary of the lifeboat, Mr. Ford, that was with in Lislee. And when he told him, he ran over here, and he saw me down back of the house, loading manure, and he shouted to me, "Come on, Jerry, the Lusitania's gone down south there." So I went away immediately after him. And as soon as the crew were assembled. She was lynched and we went to half south. There was no breeze of wind at all, it was quite calm. We couldn't raise any sail. So we rowed the whole way out to where she went down. And the first thing we met was a raft from the liner loaded with people alive. And they'd been towed in by a fisherman from south, from the western side of the parish there by the name of Madden. And his crew, they were towing her into Courtmacsherry. So the coxswain of the lifeboat and Mr. Ford, they said they'd take them, but he said himself to tow them into Courtmacsherry. And the passengers that was on the boat, they shouted to us to go way out, that there was plenty more outside, that themselves were all right, to go way out. And a bit after that then, we come across a corpse floating in the sea, and we picked him up. He was a Swedish traveller, travelling for some company he was. So we picked him up, and in his pockets there was 30 sovereigns and a checkbook. So that was traced to his friends. That was sent to his friends. Their secretary took charge of it. And we pulled out then for, I suppose, to nearly another mile. And we came to the place we thought where she went down. The surest sign we saw of it that there she went down was the ashes floating on top of the water. And all round then, there was corpses all round floating. There was, without any, they had no life belts in them, a lot of them, but some of them had. There were life belts in some of them, but we didn't pick up anyone with a life belt. The 7 we picked up, they had no life belts in them. And we stepped on there then, and it was to be about after 2 o'clock before we left here. And before we reached out there, I suppose it was between 4 and 5. And we stepped on then there. We were the first there, and the Keystone lifeboat was towed up there then by the drifter. And we started picking up the corpse. And who we took, we put them aboard the drifter. There were 2 drifters there. They're like small as the steamboats that used to drift nets, they were called, that's what they used to call them. And we stayed there then until they told us they wouldn't take no more, that they wouldn't stay any longer there, for that was too dangerous. When to be getting dark, that they wouldn't see the wreckage and thing ahead of them, and that they wouldn't stay anymore. So they gave us a tour then, or a pluck, some of them called it. They toured us to the Old Head, as far as they could go in, like. And there was a breeze of wind come up from the north then, and we were able to sail back. It was something around 2 o'clock in the night when we arrived back.
It must have been dreadful seeing all the corpses, was it?
Oh, it was a fright to me, for I was young. I never saw a corpse before on the water. But I was told off for picking him up there.
And were they all ages?
They were all ages that we took them up. Well, they were, the first one I said to the Swede. And then the two we were pulling the bow, and the other man said they said there'd be 2 sitting over his seat in that lifeboat. And the two of us were told to put in our oars and start picking up. And we were picked up men and women. There was one fellow anyway, he belonged to the ship, for he had a sort of uniform on. He must be butler or something like that, or he was in a special uniform, and he was a young man. And we picked up another man then, and he was like a stoker, he was an oldish man, he'd be running up to over 60 years or so. He had nothing on but the shirt and the trouser. And we picked up an oldish woman then. Well, she'd be about 60 years too, like she was returning home from America. She was stout. And then the bowman said, "Shall we not to take the corpses into the boat at all, only till we keep hold of them outside, take them up and keep hold of them on that side." So the next two, we picked up one on that side, then I had one anyway, a youngish girl. And it was hard to hold her very long. So the bowman, he went to the other fellow that was on the other side. There were two of them that side. So I went nearest to the boat, when we came alongside the drifter then. And the lifeboat was crushing the corpse between her and the other one, so I put my leg up that way to keep her out for a spell, and I got tired of that because the fellow that was on the drifters, they were stopped for a drink or something, and they didn't come to take it up very quick. So I shouted to the rest of them, then I couldn't stick it any longer to get through the fenders. There was fenders there to keep the boats apart from each other. So when they came up, then they took it over, and I think after that we didn't pick up much more.
Obviously you've never forgotten it.
You couldn't forget a thing like that when it happened in our young days. When we were going to a scene like that. It'd be in our mind that you couldn't forget it. I think any man couldn't forget it. You wouldn't forget an incident like that.
There were corpses everywhere.
Corpses everywhere, all round you, wherever we turned. We passed by a lady, and she had a lifebelt on, and her hand was up like that, look.
Up in the air?
Up in the air, and she floating in the water. And there was 3 or 4 gold bracelets in it. We passed by close, but we couldn't do anything when we had a corpse taken up before.
Were there people alive in the water at all?
No, not a soul alive. Not a soul alive.
And were you the first boat to arrive out?
Well, we were the first lifeboat. The Queenstone lifeboat came up a bit after.
And there was no sign of wreckage, was there?
Oh, there was. There was a few trunks, but not what you call a whole bulk of them, like. But there was a good few trunks, and there was bits of wreckage too, boards or things where they came from. But we didn't take a whole lot of notice. You wouldn't take a whole lot of notice of them there in a case like that.
There were babies killed, I think, too.
Well, I didn't see any babies. There could be.
How many of you were on the crew that day?
There was 12 oarsmen, a coxswain, a second coxswain, a bowman, and Mr. Ford, the clergyman, that was secretary for the lifeboat, he went out too.
What does the bowman do?
The bowman? Oh, he'd be looking out. They see he'd be standing up in the bow. He wouldn't be doing anything when he's looking out ahead. And the second coxswain and the coxswain would be back in the stern. And there was another man then. He was a big landlord, Mr. Longfield. He was living south out of the west of Butlerstown. And he was out fishing for pleasure in a boat, in a small boat. And we passed him there off a horsetrack, going out. And Mr. Ford, the secretary, he asked him would he like to go out. And he said he would. He came into our boat and left his own boat and went out with us. And stopped on there until she came in the night.
Obviously very hard work rowing a big boat like that.
Oh, it is hard, just hard, but when we were hardened into it, we were at it all our lifetimes. It didn't come so hard on us. But a man that wouldn't be hardened into it, to be hard on him, but we had there were a good few old men, aged men.
Did you lose many men over the years yourselves, lifeboat men?
Lifeboat men?
Did you lose many?
We didn't lose any,
Great.
to my memory.
Great. Do you remember any other wrecks that you were involved in or other rescues?
Well, I didn't throw any. When she came here first, they took 11 men off of the Falconeer south. She was a sailing ship, loaded with maize. It wasn't maize, but barley she had. And she ran aground there south in Seven Heads. And so there was a big crew on her, over 20. And some of them were, came into Strand. In there was a boat. They launched a boat from Strand, and they guided them into Strand. About 10 or 11 of them, and there were 11 more in the ship's boat, and they were afraid to land, and this lifeboat picked them up and took them into Courtmacsherry.
Did you ever feel afraid of the sea?
Afraid of it?
Mm-hmm.
Indeed I did when I was young. When I went to sea first, I used to be frightened enough of it.
How old are you now?
90 years gone.
Great age.
It is not bad.
Very good. How do you put down the time?
Oh, sure, be knocking around, doing everything I could. I lived here all my lifetime. And my father before me, and my grandfather.
Lot of history around here.
There is. In my time when I was young, there were a lot of people living down here because they were living in fishing. They didn't care about farming at all. Well, farming wasn't so good that time. But I think on this side here, there was over 80 when I was going to school of population. Well, that's why the parish priest that was here, Father McCarthy, he asked my father, he used to be making a small collection for him for Christmas, 6 pence and a shilling and 2 shillings, as scarring as they were, the people were. And he asked him to make out how many people was here in what they used to call Barry's Point. There was 82 here.
And how many are here now?
It wouldn't make 15 at all.
Were times very hard when you were a young lad?
Well, we couldn't call them very hard at all. When there was a very few people that was barely off enough for a time. They were evicted out of the Bettina land. They hadn't much, but still there were no one very badly off, but they used to have plenty of potatoes and fish. And they lived principally on them and tea wasn't very plentiful. It's plentiful as it is now, but they used to have tea. And they used to bake their own bread because they used to grow a little bit of wheat. Nearly every house, every family, they'd grow a half acre of wheat or something, and they'd thresh it, and they'd get it ground in the mill, and they'd bake that for bread. And they'd have fish, mostly plenty of fish in every house.
What was the most popular fish?
Well, hake was going very plentiful that time. And they were making a good lot of money out of it because they used to cure it and sell it. They used to cure the hake at home. And out about Christmas time, then they'd carry it out and there'd be great demand for it in the market. They used to, well, I remember a time when they was first, there'd be about £3 a hundred they'd get for it. They'd have it salted, they'd cut half of it, and they'd put it out drying. It'd be like the stackfish would be in the shops now. And they'd keep it inside till a fortnight or before Christmas or that way. That's the time the most demand used to be for the fish. And they'd sell it in Clonakilty and Bandon and sell it in the towns.
An eyewitness account there of the Lusitania episode from World War I from Jerry Murphy, now in his 90th year, who lives near Lislee, near Courtmacsherry.